Yes, Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding me time. I appreciate him letting me go out of order. I'm not a member of his committee, but when my committee has time on Thursday night, I'm hoping to be able to attend the memorial service for our comrade Charles Norwood, who we lost today. Madam Speaker, I rise to speak against H-Con Res 63. I think it's a mistake. It's the first step of this new Congress, the first step this new Congress is going to make towards cutting off the funding for our troops. And you don't have to take my word for it. Yesterday's CQ Today, a magazine widely read up here in Washington, and I'm quoting, "It is a foot in the door toward limiting military involvement in Iraq. The Democrats want to do this via the congressional power of the checkbook." Further in the article, it says Democrats are well on their way toward planning more aggressive measures in an attempt to force redeployments, beginning by blocking funding, and ending in the supplemental spending request. And then finally, Democrats said the resolution would just be a first step in the process that could result in the reduction or reconditioning of funds slated for our troops in Iraq. Well, we don't have to go too very far back in our past to see the consequences of that type of action. When I was in Iraq in August of 2005, General Casey told myself and a group of us who were there that there is no group in the world that can stand up to the American military. In fact, the only organized body in the world capable of defeating the American military was the American Congress. I believe he was right. The CRS has done a report for this Congress, a report for Congress about restrictions of military operations in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Somalia, and Kosovo, funding and non-funding approaches. And I reference particularly, and I urge my colleagues, this is easy to download from the internet on the CRS. Simply type in Cooper-Church Amendment, and you'll get this well-researched product. It details the Mansfield Amendment, the Cooper-Church Amendment of 1970 and 1973, the Cranston Amendment, the McGovern-Hatfield Amendment. It also talks about the funding for Somalia. In fact, in this House in 1999, when President Clinton was president, a bipartisan group in this House came together to defeat a motion to block funding for the troops in Kosovo. So congressional actions regarding funding do have a real-world impact, and I would submit that much of the chaos that ensued after we left Vietnam, and I would include the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in that chaos, I would include the militant jihadist takeover of our embassy in Iran in that chaos, much of that ensued because of congressional action that was taken on the floor of this House in cutting off funding for our troops. And I'm not a big one on process. I haven't been here that long. I don't know that I understand process all that well, but why in the world would we not allow a vote or even a motion to recommit on, say, Sam Johnson's bill, H.R. 511? Sam Johnson's bill, a simple two-page bill that details all of the fine things done by our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, and ends with this simple paragraph: faithful support of Congress. Congress will not cut off or restrict funding for units and members in the armed forces that the Commander-in-Chief has deployed in harm's way. Wow, that's pretty simple. I don't understand. I frankly do not understand why this House could not vote on this simple measure submitted by my fellow Texan, Sam Johnson, a legitimate war hero in his own right. I simply do not understand why we wouldn't have an opportunity to vote on that bill or offer it as a motion to recommit before we vote on the resolution. And the resolution itself, it's a shame that we weren't offered a chance to amend the bill, to amend the resolution, to perhaps make it better. I urge people to go online and read it for themselves. It's only 2 lines. It's not a very heavy lift to read this particular piece of legislation. Line 1. Congress and the American people will continue to support and protect members of the United States Armed Forces who are serving or who have served bravely and honorably in Iraq. That's sentence 1. Remarkable for what it leaves out. What about a comma and who will serve? Would it be so wrong to include those individuals who will serve in whatever time is left in the country of Iraq, to include them in as being worthy of our support in Congress? Line 2 is so vague as to almost defy description. Line 2 reads, Congress disapproves of the decision of President George W. Bush announced on January 10, 2007 to deploy more than 20,000 additional troops. Well, would 19,995 troops be okay? Would Congress then not cock an eyebrow to say, we don't like that either? Well, what is that second statement actually, what point are we trying to make by that second statement other than we don't support the Commander-in-Chief, we don't support the mission, and as a consequence, you do have to ask if we support the troops. Now, we are all sent here in Congress, we're all elected by 600 to 700,000 people back in our districts, back in our states, to make hard decisions. We're not sent here to read the polls, stick our fingers in the wind, and then decide which direction to go. We are not sent here to shift tactics because we think we may become more popular back home if we do that. I fully recognize that by voting against this resolution, I put myself in jeopardy of re-election. And I'm willing to do that because I believe a vote for this resolution puts my country's fate in significant jeopardy for decades to come. Now, I was not here when this House voted in October of 2002 to give the President the power he needed to deploy the troops.